Member for Cariboo North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It truly is a privilege to be able to speak to this motion today and to bring the voice of my constituents of Cariboo North, that governments must always work to deliver results for British Columbians and put people first. I want to take a moment, Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge that this week is National Nurses Awareness Week. And I want to thank all of the nurses in our communities for their incredible work. And I believe that government does need to work for our nurses and to make sure that they're safe. And last week, I had the opportunity to meet with a group of Northern nurses, and this is what I learned. I learned that at least once a month, our nurses, 50% are exposed to weapons. 72% of our nurses in Northern BC are exposed to illicit substances. 54% of our nurses in Northern British Columbia experience physical violence. 85% of our nurses in Northern British Columbia experience verbal or emotional abuse. 94% of nurses in Northern British Columbia are working short-staffed, and 34% of nurses in Northern British Columbia are seriously considering leaving nursing or are already making a plan to do so. These are not the results that our communities need. These are not the type of outcomes that our communities in Northern British Columbia expect. And after 7 years of the NDP government, these are the type of results that we're experiencing in our community. Last week, I had the opportunity to talk a little bit about, in this legislature, about the impacts of what people are feeling in rural British Columbia. Today, I wanted to take my time to talk about the workers in my constituency and in Northern BC. And I want to talk a little bit about the impacts of legislation changes and regulation changes and policy changes that really have a significant impact on workers in my riding, and particularly around permitting. This government is absolutely failing on getting the necessary permits out the door that keep our workers employed. A few weeks ago, we had 400 people that didn't take a paycheck home because we had a government that wasn't able to get permits out the door. So it's not just the workers in the sawmills and our pulp mills and our MDF plants and our pellet plants and all of that all depend on these permits to get out the door. It's our logging contractors, it's our small businesses that depend on it. It's the whole ecosystem. And when the government fails to deliver the necessary supports and permits and regulation and supports like that, our workers suffer, and our workers are suffering right now, and they need change. I also want to talk about our mining sector. Our mining sector is also equally waiting for permits. And when the government fails to deliver these permits, there are very real consequences on the people and workers in my riding. You know, the best that this government can offer when we see a mill shut down is that, look, you know what, we'll give you some help writing a resume. And then, you know what, you should consider taking that and moving to an urban setting. Maybe you could go into the tech sector. You tell that to a worker who's worked 35, 40 years in a mill, that you know what you can do now, why don't you just pick up your family, pick up your life, and move to an urban setting? Because you know what, I think you'd be really great in the tech sector. Well, I have a message for this government, and I have a message to all of the people working behind the scenes. People in rural BC don't want to move to urban settings to get a job. We want permits issued. We want to keep our lifestyle. We like living in rural communities. We like doing the job. We're proud of the work that we do. That sweat equity that builds this province matters. And we are saying to this government, after 7 years, you've not only abandoned rural British Columbia, you've abandoned the workers. What happened to the NDP party that stood up for workers? The only thing that this government is doing is they're putting workers out of work, and people in our communities demand and expect more.
Absolutely.